Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Nature of Predators. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 134. Memory transcription subject Governor Tava of the Venlo Republic. Date Standardized Human Time February 5th, 2137. Secretary General Zhao had clambered up onto the stage, wielding a microphone to address the sprawling crowd. I perked my ears up to hear what the initial rallying cry of the humans had crafted. From what I'd heard, their species possessed excellent speechwriters with the ability to weave compelling arguments and play to semantics. The UN leader was holding a few note cards and had a presentation behind him on the projector. Noah walked up to me with a plate full of food, waving a croissant in front of my face. Why did he have to remember my favorite Terran pastry? "You want to distract me, don't you, Predator?" I teased. The human smirked to himself. "It's working, isn't it? Here comes the airplane. I'll send you to the opposite side of the room if you don't behave, and stop trying to fatten my waistline." Ambassador Williams made a good pouting face, lifting his visor to reveal what humans called puppy dog eyes. To think that binocular gazes could be changed to her expression garnering sympathy. I shook my head before breaking off a small piece of croissant and popping it in my mouth. The astronaut looked satisfied with himself and delved into the rest of the excessive amount of food. Perhaps I needed to babysit him before he gorged himself sick. Ugh, humans. I managed to center my attention on the stage as Secretary General commenced his speech. Every delegation in the room was granting the human their full focus. The group he'd been mingling with before seemed especially keen on his words, after the disarming sampler that was dispensed amongst them. Marketing the prey attributes of Terrans was a brilliant move. Had I known what utter dorks they were during our first meeting, the perceived schism between our ancestors wouldn't have felt as irreconcilable. "Hello, leaders of the Orion Arm. I am not here to present the reasons why humanity is not a menace or a threat to civilization, or to deflect claims that we're bloodthirsty monsters," Zhao growled. "Each of you have interacted with us at length, and if you don't already see that as an infallible truth, there is little I could say to convince you otherwise. We're people, like you, who have been persecuted without just cause, precisely like you. We're no one's enemy, lest you threaten the safety of our loved ones, our homes, and our continued way of life." I leaned closer to Noah's ear. "The last line seems a little provocative. They could take threatening your way of life as opposing hunting, for instance, or asking you not to eat meat on their worlds." "Absurd. Anyone who draws wild conclusions like that wouldn't last a day in this alliance," my beloved replied. The Secretary General adjusted his visor before continuing. "Humans respect the inherent differences in our cultures, despite their artificial origin. We don't ask you to change yourselves, we merely ask for the same courtesy. We ask, no. We demand not to be changed or altered for things beyond our control or ingrained over centuries of natural development in our collective identities. The laws we wish to codify as a foundation for this proposed union etch that fervent belief into stone. Please raise an appendage if you feel that your species was treated unfairly during your uplift by the Federation." My paw rocketed into the air, joined by dozens of others in my expansive vision. Scanning the entirety of the crowd in my subtle motion, I noticed there wasn't a single attendee refraining from lifting their arm in agreement. The crow cattle, the dirtian, both had wings raised, while the Mazet President Kupo flared his trunk to the heavens in protest of the early size-based bigotry. The Yodel ambassador was practically bouncing to show emphasis. The tiny quadrupedal Zerillians rocked up onto their hind legs to signal agreement. My own people bore indignant looks, mirroring my raised paw. It was a sea of consensus detesting the personal effects of the Federation's overreach. "I am glad you recognize what's been done to you was immoral. We're going to ensure that such horrors are never inflicted by anyone who calls themselves a friend of humanity." Zhao gestured for us to lower our appendages. "That anyone who dares to trample another civilization's sanctity and sovereignty is given no quarter, no aid, no herd with us. Our first item to show you is based on a document adopted by every member of the United Nations. now modified to reflect sapient rights rather than solely human rights. I present the Universal Declaration of Sapient Rights. The display behind Zhao offered a code to scan relevant documents to our holopads, so we could peruse its contents in our own language. Article 1 stated that all sapient beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and were endowed with reason and consciousness to act in the spirit of kinship. Subsequent listings expounded upon those rights, prohibiting discrimination, banishing torture and servitude, and guaranteeing civil rights about personal beliefs and enforcement of laws. There is nothing I could imagine anyone finding objectionable. I noticed the Terran snuck diet in between language and religion as things not to deny rights over. Knowing how human culture is, I imagine that's a new protection added for their sake. The United Nations is open to suggested revisions for anything you think we've overlooked that's heavy-handed or that would otherwise provide you reassurance. For our own sake, we've also issued the Geneva Convention for your ratification. The Secretary General pressed on. Should there ever be an engagement or dispute between member states, I want civilians to be kept out of the crossfire. I want some semblance of civility in the affair, as brutal, bloody, and barbaric as war, though my true hope is that we maintain peace through this very forum. It would provide humanity sanctity of mind, not to worry about wanton suffering, so I ask that you review this document as well. Noah mumbled a comment to me through a mouthful of food. I should think our doubters like the promise from the predators to accept surrenders and treat prisoners fairly, amongst other things. Also, it shows our intent never to raid worlds and target civilians like the Orcs all do. Rules of war are a strange concept to us, that there can be any goodness or empathy when you're trying to kill people. It's hard to wrap even my mind around, I whispered. I never imagined Venel fighting you anyways, so it's a moot point. The final point is perhaps our most important one. It's something entirely new we wrote. The Secretary General's lips, uncovered by any mask, hardened below his eye visor. To touch upon your discontent over your own uplifts, this document contains a protocol for handling the discovery of any new species. I felt this was an issue that we must take with the utmost of gravitas. Please consult the final item in your packet for full details. I flicked through my holopad's catalog, landing on the discussed draft, doing better than taking every child on a planet away from their parents and crippling them at a genetic level. Seemed like a low bar to clear. It would be curious to see the specific items the Terrans had in mind. Hopefully, the other guests also agreed that young races should be treated with dignity and in the spirit of equality. Zhao commanded the stage. Panels must convene to ensure that any first contact, 1, does not threaten the indigenous culture or supplant it with our own. 2, that barring an emergency event, it must be planned at length to avoid frightening the locals through careful study of cultural norms and values. 3, that we will not engage in any communications, visits, or exchanges that are not expressly desired by the natives. And 4, that they will not face discrimination for their technological level. Many questions? So you still want to perform uplifts after everything you've seen? Yodel Ambassador Laulo barked, ears quivering with anger. Why are we interfering with the species' natural development at all? Excellent question. I grant that this is a contentious ethical issue, even on our world. However, to sit back with an air of moral superiority and allow millions to die of disease and famine is to deem these species as lesser. To say we don't care about their lives. Obviously, dumping an entire catalog of knowledge at once is irresponsible. It should be drip-fed and focused on issues that impact quality of life. Uplifting itself is not evil, as long as you're not planting your heel in their neck. Yeah, I see. I'm still not sure it's a good idea, but proceed, I suppose. I appreciate your feedback. Any ramifications of our group's interactions with another culture at any stage of technology deserves consideration. The influence we have must be wielded for good. I imagine a first contact would be planned for years. Would anyone else like to voice a question or concern? Dotian Ambassador Koji puffed her grey feathers on display of dominance. You claim to care about herbivores, yet you ally and cooperate with the Orcs. Our intentions with the Arxor are entirely as follows. To use them to strengthen our position in the war, to liberate all sapient cattle in the galaxy, and to dismantle the Dominion where possible. This was seen at Maloo, as you all have heard, where we got a UN-friendly Arxor commander to soften the Kolshians up for us. The battle has been difficult nonetheless, but it's given us a competitive advantage, and you all have seen the millions of rescues that we've freed in a few months.
So you admit that you are working with the Arxor?
I admit that we are using the Arxor to benefit humanity and sapients across the galaxy. That accusation has dogged us from the beginning, yet no one can conjure an example of us siding with or acting like them. We went to great lengths to stop the raids on the Cradle, Fall, and Silas, losing human lives in the process.
You claim, human, that they are not your friends. We're supposed to believe that predators would choose prey over a fellow predator that conveniently saved Earth.
You should believe us. Do you see the Arcs are invited to this meeting today? We sought to secure our alliance with all of you here today, not them. While some bargains we've made are unsavory, even causing us discomfort, don't fault us for doing whatever we must to win this war. I want everyone here to survive and remain free.
While Arxor infighting was known throughout the galaxy, I was the sole leader in this room aware of Isif's empathy test. It wasn't something that the chief hunter cared to advertise, so he wouldn't have appreciated me publicizing it. Our shared goals for a better future were the reason I cooperated with him. Had other parties known the extent of our interactions, they might vote to hurl me out of the nearest airlock. I understand your point, though even talking to them is most unsettling. Koji still eyed the predator with disdain, but submitted to his confident words. I think I speak for everyone in this room in saying that we'd never work with a filthy grey. We'll be watching this.
General Secretary Zhao nodded. Very well. Is that the only concern in the room? You have the fossil imprisoned in their own world. Isn't that right?
Crocattle separatist Nulia squawked.
Yes. It was an option that took the fossil out of play and allows us to decide what to do with them after the war ends. We can't afford to occupy them or to do nothing and let them rejoin the war. Besides, there must be consequences. They perpetrated too much evil as a civilization. I agree wholeheartedly. Why did you let them live? Clear the debris and bomb them. The fossil deserve to die for what they've done.
Calls of assent rippled across the room. If I wasn't afraid of upsetting peace-loving Noah, I might have signaled my own desire for righteous vengeance. These were a people who couldn't abide by any civilization not being under their control, and who ripped children away from their mothers and Skulgar. Why did the fossil deserve a future after reshaping every species and allowing other worlds like the Thafkis to fall? Had the predators decided to eradicate them, I might have felt a dark glimmer of satisfaction.
Well, I say we save the serious, lengthy discussions for tomorrow when the Boltons presumably show. I'll leave you with a final thought. My proposed name for this venture is the Sapient Coalition. Mull that over, and without further ado, let's get the festivities started.
A cheer went up from the more human-friendly guests as the predators switched the music to a more lively overture. Drinks rolled in on carts, which earned the rapturous reaction from the visitors who were less than fond of the binocular-eyed sapients. Koji, Crocattle Separatist Nula, and Gojid Minister Kiri beelined for the liquor, while other guests approached at a normal pace. Blim was also scurrying towards the stronger booze, though trying not to attract attention. I wondered if it was a good idea for the rescue to be drinking. I brushed up against Noah, feigning a look of innocence. Do you think that you can beat me in a drinking contest, dear?
You're evil. He placed his hands on his hips and stifled a laugh. I'm kind of a lightweight, so I don't think so. I never understood what's so bad about that anyways. I get the same effect out of less booze. Isn't that a win?
Well, humans are all lightweights to me, so I won't judge you any more than the rest of your kind. Come on, let's browse the fun juice. This is a happy occasion for once.
Lowering the inhibitions of a predator would have come across as a suicidal idea, but I trusted that Noah had no latent bloodlust at this point. We retrieved a handful of drinks, getting into the social mood.
The Terran ambassador downed a few shots of vodka, perhaps because of me. It seemed unusual to bring out a bar over the diplomatic summit, but I suspected it was to stifle guests' fearful inhibitions. With the leaders' hackles down, they might warm up to humans, or even enjoy themselves. We wandered the floor, avoiding dancing or sitting at a table for the moment. Secretary General Zhao was showcasing a number of games from Earth, a few of which were children's games. Noah volunteered to demonstrate one called Pin the Tail on the Donkey, and tried to rally the crowd as he swaggered forward. Second-hand embarrassment made my skin feel hot, watching him struggle to remove his visor. The UN leader shook his head before procuring a cloth strip and wrapping it over the ambassador's eyes. Sarah waltzed in by my side. The Bolton delegation has arrived, Tava. They have had the longest voyage of anyone here, but that accounts for everyone on the guest list. Excellent. Stick around for a moment. Noah has been drinking and is blindfolded. I'm sure you'll want to see this. The human ambassador was handed a tail to stick on an animal picture. It was apparent from his head posture that he couldn't see anything. Zhao placed his hands on Noah's shoulders, spinning him around 10 times. The astronaut staggered forward, lurching from side to side, and extended a searching arm in front of him. The crowd was uncertain how to react to the sightless, disoriented predator, but the braver spectators cheered him on. My quiet snickering turned to horror as Noah stumbled right before the donkey picture. His face smacked against the wall, and the mock tail fell from his grip. I rushed to his side before I could think, cradling the groaning predator's skull in my paws. The astronaut pushed the blindfold off his eyes and offered a reassuring smile. Crimson blood was dripping from his nose, sending a jolt of pain through my heart. This put a damper in an otherwise jovial moment. All the security Zhao has here, and nobody arrested the 2D donkey. It clearly assaulted me, Noah quipped. I chuckled at his goofiness. Do I have to cut you off already? Let's go get you cleaned up. I'm fine, Tava. I was just demonstrating what not to do for the people who've never played. How does anyone think humans are dangerous? I helped Noah up, checking him for any other injuries. Don't try to act all tough. I'll find the first aid kit and... My chastising of Ambassador Williams faltered as I noticed the complexion drain from Zhao's cheeks. The Secretary General had a hand on his earpiece and didn't seem to like the news that he was receiving. The UN leader quietly muttered for everyone to stay put before striding out of the room. I shared a glance with Noah and Sarah. An unspoken understanding was reached between us. The three of us tailed the Chinese national, followed shortly after by a majority of the delegates. This feels like what happened on Earth's memorial ceremony all over again. I have to know what has him shaken up and find a way to keep Noah safe. What's going on? I screeched. Zhao didn't even look back. Stay where you are, Tava. There's an unknown ship that followed the Poltons from the handoff site without being seen. What? Is it the Colchians? Noah's injury was forgotten, and he quickened his pace to catch the Secretary General. All of the delegates are in one place. Most of our key personnel are here. I thought this location was secure. I don't know who it is, but I know it's not a Shadow Fleet ship. More on that in a moment. Our audio recognition tells us it was a Dosa voice transmitting a message to us, requesting permission to land. The Dosa delegation is already here, Ambassador, and the shuttle itself is a Crow-Cattle ship that went missing years ago. We jammed its weapon systems, forced it to land in a sealed bay, and ordered the passengers to disembark. There's only 2 live signatures. But you let the unscheduled visitors land, I hissed. And I'm sorry, how did they avoid sensor detection? Sarah's tone was thick with worry. Who would know where the handoff was to follow them in the first place? I'm trying to get answers. We need to see what's going on and how they found us. They refuse to say who they are over the channel. The ship is in a sealed hangar, and the entire team of soldiers will be waiting for them. The station's integrity is safe. We're going to sweep the craft for bombs. Those scanners turned up no suspicious markers. That's why I asked everyone to stay where they were instead of following me. Dirty and Ambassador Koji squawked with suspicion. You said yourself that it was a Dosa speaking, not a Colchian make. That it was weapons are offline, that your people vastly outnumber the passengers, and that a scan showed no signs of threats. What are you hiding that you don't want us to see? I'm protecting you. After the incident on Vendel Prime, I've been taking every precaution to ensure you're safe on the station. But if you insist, tag along by all means. We will. There's no predator deception happening on my watch. Secretary General Zhao tightened his fists, storming into the bay. Dozens of guests tailed behind us, determined to see what the commotion was about. True to the UN leader's words, Predator soldiers were encircling a small Federation shuttle. Massive guns were pointed at the landing ramp in case of trouble. I flitted my paws into Noah's hand, and he squeezed it to reassure me. Military personnel delivered the order for the passengers to disembark upon Zhao's signal. The tension was tangible in the air, descending on the gathering with suffocating effects. The landing ramp lowered, and I craned my neck to spot the ship's occupants. It was disturbing that an unknown party could track us to a secret location. There was the possibility that they were a scout ship for an actual threat. We needed to assess their allegiance and question them at length. The Terrans held remarkable trigger discipline, so I trusted the soldiers not to get itchy fingers. A massive shadow moved inside the ship, and the muscles in my legs stiffened with horror. Noah's uncovered eyes went wide with shock, making the veins pop next to his brown eyes. The Terran soldiers grew much more aggressive with their shouts, now ordering the passengers to stay where they were. Gasps and screams rippled through the Federation crowd, who shuffled backward. If someone didn't reassure them, this would turn into a stampede. The figure cloaked in darkness was unmistakably an Arkansas silhouette. I thought about Zhao's response to Dirtian accusations, shooting down the notion of working with the Greys. Had the humans invited them here? Either way, the galaxy's other predators had infiltrated the secret meeting, and that didn't bode well for the Sapient Coalition's diplomatic prospects. End of chapter. There is a new legend on the horizon. Blueberry Cat has taken the T6 Patreon spot. Thank you very much, and I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say that. I would just like to thank our T5 members, Lord Azrakel, Ambrose Cattell, Quantum Wednesday, Dragzoon W.R.E, Blueberry Cat, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, and Leslie 517. Thank you very much.